It is my pleasure to welcome you to the crash course Foundations of Quantitative Research. Right at the start, a caveat. If you're looking how to write a research paper, what to put in the sections and how to produce this content for the sections of a research paper, I would like to refer you to another crash course of mine, which has a very much hands-on approach, and that crash course is entitled Quantitative Research Papers. However, as a golden rule in life, it's always good to get the basics right. And this is what this crash course here is all about, the foundations of quantitative research. This crash course consists of 7 video lectures. In this first part, I will introduce you to the philosophical and theoretical foundations of empirical research. Then in the second part, there is an excursus to qualitative research. Even if one is the most hardcore quantitative researcher and will never touch qualitative research, it is a good idea to understand what the other part of empirical research, qualitative research, is doing. Then you can see what qualitative research can do and what qualitative research cannot do. This also gives you a very good idea what quantitative research can do and what quantitative research cannot do. Third part is back to purely quantitative research. It's about quality criteria. Then comes the research design. And in the parts 5, 6, and 7, I will explain the foundations of inductive, descriptive, and inferential statistics. But now let's go to the philosophical and theoretical foundations of empirical research. First, what is research and reality? What is the understanding of research and reality in general? And that applies to both quantitative and qualitative research. Then it is the foundations, philosophical and theoretical foundations of qualitative research. And finally, in this section, in this lecture, the philosophical and theoretical foundations of quantitative research. Now, research and reality. Our life, which we can say is reality, is very complex. Just think of the last argument you had with your beloved partner. That is bloody complex. What does she think? Why is she acting this way? And your partner will have the same thoughts on the other way around. It's very complex. Furthermore, our world, reality, is not entirely overt. Some things we cannot see. Again, the argument with your beloved partner that you might have had recently. You cannot see his or her emotions or thoughts. You can only guess from some expressions that your partner has made what they might think or feel. So a world is not entirely overt. And the world is dynamic, meaning it's changing constantly. Again, let's do not hope you had an argument with your partner, but assuming you had one, then let's hope that this changed and you're completely in love and happily ever after again. There, the world has changed. So that is our reality. Complex, not entirely visible, and it's dynamic, it's changing constantly. So what is now the relationship of research with this reality? With research, academic research, we would like to explain reality. And we would like to explain reality through theories that we developed and then test through research. Theories are abstract explanations of reality. And these theories should form the basis on how we can improve reality. So as researchers, we have a very noble endeavor we're going on as academic researchers. We would like to explain reality a bit better, so we form our theories, and based on our theories, reality should be improved. You do whatever research, write a research paper in which you explain reality, a bit better. Of course, not entirely you can explain reality, but you explain reality a bit better, you come a bit closer to the truth. Then you write your paper, you bring it out, and others read your research paper and see your theories and how you tested your theories. Based on this information, the readers of your research paper should be able to improve their realities. So, what are theories? Theories consist of constructs, or concepts, and hypotheses. Constructs are simplified and generalized abstractions of elements of reality. The hypotheses are the relationships between these constructs. You also find the term model. Model is defined as a simplified image of reality. And there you can see every theory is a model, but not every model is a theory. Think of a toy train. Toy train is a model. It's a simplified image of an actual train. But it's not an academic theory. But every theory, as it consists of simplified and generalized abstractions of elements of reality, the constructs, is a simplification of reality, and therefore it is a model. And the research context, you can use model and theory as synonyms. They're basically the same. Some might now would like to differ, but in essence, models and theories in the context of academic research can be understood as one term or one as the same. And here is an example of a theory or a model. We assume that a high motivation to understand empirical research will lead to a better understanding of empirical research, which then will lead to more success in empirical research. We have constructs, motivation to understand empirical research, understanding of empirical research, and success in empirical research. These are constructs, simplifications of elements of reality. By the way, motivation to understand empirical research or the understanding of empirical research is nothing we can touch or grab onto. These are abstractions, abstracts of elements of reality that we made up, or that we defined. Made up sounds not quite right. And then the relationship that we normally call the hypotheses. If motivation is high, understanding is good. If understanding is good, success is better. These relations, the errors here, these will be the hypotheses. So theory or a model is constructs and their relationships. And that applies to both this understanding quantitative and qualitative research. But let me start here with the philosophical and theoretical foundations of qualitative research. You can find several philosophical foundations. I will present you two, which I believe are the central ones. The first is social constructivism. And first to look at how is, within social constructivism, how is reality understood? Reality is understood as something that is constructed. The name might give it away. Constructivism. Reality is constructed. In other words, created by humans. We do not have, in this philosophical direction, we do not have an objectively existing reality, something like a God-created world. That's what we do not assume here. We assume it's all constructed by humans. And reality is constructed on an individual level because of my individual thoughts and feelings, and on a social level because of our interactions with other humans. To give you two examples of constructed reality. Individually constructed reality is might be the individual preferences for movies. One likes a thriller, one likes a war movie, one likes romantic comedies. We all have slightly different taste in what is a good movie. An example for socially constructed reality is the laws that are passed in Parliament. So, at least in Western democracies, there's not something God has given us, laws that we have in our countries, like it's not allowed to kill someone else just because he's taking your parking spot. These are laws that are passed in parliaments, and these laws might change over time. What is the consequence then out of this philosophical direction or foundation for qualitative research? In qualitative research, we see first-order constructs. These are the phenomena experienced by normal people, which we normally, in a qualitative interview or a group discussion, which we want to find out what are they actually experiencing, what are they thinking, what are they feeling. These are first-order constructs. Researchers are not some sort of superhuman being. They're also humans. They're not above the normal people, fundamentally. So they're second-order constructs. And these are the conclusions, also constructed conclusions, not absolute truth conclusions, constructed conclusions of researchers, through which they want to explain the first-order constructs of the normal people. The second main foundation of qualitative research is phenomenology. Goodness gracious. So, what is a phenomenon? Phenomenon is a subjective experience of the environment or parts thereof. Important is that the phenomenon is the experience of the environment, and the phenomenon is not the environment itself. Also important here, common conversation, we might only call special events or events that we regard as special, meaningful, as phenomenon. That is not in the research understanding, that is not entirely true. So perhaps, depends on your age, you can remember when Johnny Wilkinson scored the deciding kick in 2003, which won England the Rugby World Cup. That was a phenomenon. But what also is a phenomenon, when I went out to the grocer's this morning and bought my breakfast, which is not very exciting. So phenomenon is everything that someone experiences in his or her environment. And give me another example for phenomenon. So let's call it the objective event. That is the kiss with the love of your life. So the two lips touching and whatever you're doing when kissing. That is the objective event. The phenomenon is the experience of emotions like romance, passion, fulfillment, closeness, whatever you experienced during this kiss. That would be the phenomenon. What does this phenomenology mean for qualitative research? We focus on not how the world is, objectively is, but we focus on comprehensively understanding how people subjectively experience their reality. How see people their world, and not how is the world. So it's not like physics or such discipline where we want to see how the world is. Here, phenomenology, and therewith, on this basis, qualitative research would like to find out how people subjectively experience their reality. To sum this up, what does this mean for qualitative research? Our epistemic approach is induction. And induction, this is how we've come to new knowledge, to an inductive approach. In general, it's defined as generalizing or forming theories from specific instances. So we want to develop theories or model from specific situation or context. Let me give you a normal world example of inductive procedure. So how you gain knowledge. Think back when you were a child and you were sitting with your parents in the car Whenever you saw your mother or your father turning the steering wheel to the right, the car drove to the right. Whenever you saw your mother or father turning the steering wheel to the left, the car drove to the left. You didn't think much of this, but inductively you've learned a general rule, like a law, that whenever a driver turns the steering wheel to the right, a car will go to the right. Whenever the driver turns the steering wheel to the left, the car will go to the left. And I believe when you learn to drive a car, we're in driving school, the instructor did not tell you, oh, that's a very important general rule. If you want to go right, turn the steering wheel to the right. If you want to go left, turn the steering wheel to the left. No, we all have inductively learned this general rule by the power of observation. What is then the principal research process in qualitative research? We're collecting data through qualitative interviews, group discussions, observations. There are more data collection methods, but qualitative interviews and then group discussions are probably the most common one. And in this data collection, we want to capture phenomena experienced by people. And we have our data, and this data we analyze. And there we use interpretive and discovering methods. We want to discover a theory out of these specific experiences of people. Examples for such data analysis procedures are the grounded theory methodology or the qualitative quantum analysis. And out of this analysis, structuring the data, making sense of it, understanding it, we develop a model, and that is based, of course, on these phenomena we have analyzed. So, the epistemic objective of qualitative research is understanding and explaining constructivist phenomenological reality by developing theories or models from the subjective experiences of people. That is qualitative research. Now let's come to quantitative research. And I would like to start with an example. What is typically, or how could a quantitative research project look like? We have a theory, and that says work satisfaction has an impact on organizational commitment. That is what we assume. I would like to find out, is this the case or not? So what we do, we test our theory empirically. We have a standardized survey and several hundred or thousand participants, and here very much simplified. Of course, there are better measurement instruments, but we might ask, how satisfied are you with your work on a scale from 1 completely dissatisfied to 6 completely satisfied? And then how committed are you to your employer on a scale from 1 not committed at all to 6 fully committed? In this case, we probably would use a regression analysis and find out, yes, we can assume for the time being that work satisfaction has an impact on organizational commitment, or we might say and find out through our data and analysis, no, work satisfaction does not have an impact on organizational commitment. That is how a quantitative research project typically looks like. With this first understanding or feeling for quantitative research, I would like to go to the philosophical foundations next. And one might argue that Karl Popper influenced our thinking in the last century more than anyone else. And Karl Popper came up with the idea of critical rationalism, which includes scientific realism. Here, the understanding of reality is that there is actually an objectively existing world. One might say it's a God-created world, and that is actually there. But this world is, as I said at the start of this lecture, very complex, not entirely overt, and dynamic. It's changing. So that means with all our restrictions as human beings, we will never in a million years be able to get a full understanding of our world. We might get a better understanding, but we'll never have a full understanding of our world. This means that all the knowledge, all the theories we are developing are conjectural. They're not the absolute truth. We can never say this is how the world objectively is, and we can say never can say this with absolute certainty. It's all conjectural knowledge. However, we assign to our theories, we assign the meaning of general rules or laws. We say our theories are like general rules or laws, even though we cannot say they're true with absolute certainty. And this uncertainty leads to the approach or the principle of falsification. Falsification means one cannot prove or verify that a theory is true. So never in a research paper write something like, I've proven that A has an impact on B, or I've verified that A has an impact on B. That is a deadly sin. Never write this. You can confirm that this is the case, but you can never prove or verify. One can only prove that a theory is not true, and that is falsified. And give me an example, the classic. So, and that is why we can never prove that something is true, and also shows that inductive knowledge gain, according to Karl Popper, is flawed in its principle. So you go to one lake and see a few swans and they're all white. You go to the second lake, again all swans are white, and you repeat this over and over, see lots of lakes, lots of swans, they're all white. An absolute conclusion now that all swans are white is not correct. You cannot do this, because you might go to the next lake and there you see a black swan. So you cannot say with certainty after hundreds of lakes and hundreds of white swans that all swans are white. There must be just one black swan coming around the corner, and you can say, oh, blimey, that was not correct. I have now proven that my theory, all swans are white, is not true. In other words, I could falsify this theory. So what does it mean for quantitative research? We have generalized theories, which are like, or we treat like laws or general rules, and we apply these theories or general rules in specific situations. And then we can explain reality through lots of theories that we have tested, some of which could be confirmed, they were not falsified. So we can say, for the moment, we can assume the world looks like this. And some we have falsified. And there we can say, oh, we know that the world does not look like this theory. So we have reality, which we explain through a lot of theories, and we can come closer to reality, or the truth, if you will, by knowing which theories could not be falsified, which can be confirmed for the moment, and which theories were falsified. So let's go to the epistemological approach, the research procedure, and the objective of quantitative research. The general epistemological approach is of deductive nature. Deduction, the general definition of deduction is coming from generalized rules to specific instances. That means, I hope I could make this clear before, we're applying generalized theories to specific situations or contexts. Let me give you an example to explain how deduction works. And here is an example for deductive nomological reasoning. nomological. Nomos comes from Greek and means law. We always have a general rule, a specific condition, and if they come together, we have a consequence, a deduction that we can make. So in this case, our general rule is, in this example, if someone is a Royal Marine, he has the fitness level of an international athlete. Then comes the specific condition. We meet Jonathan, and we get to know that Jonathan is a Royal Marine. Then our deductive consequence is general rule plus specific condition. Jonathan has the fitness level of an international athlete. So coming from generalized rules and applying these to specific instances. How does the research process in quantitative research look like? First, we develop a theory model from existing literature. To be precise, I should say a hypothesized model. We do not know if this model will hold, or if we have to force, or we will falsify it. So we say this is how the world might look like. This is our model and theory. Then we collect data through standardized questionnaires. We analyze the data with statistical methods, through which these methods, procedures, we can test our theories, our model, and then we can accept, based on this analysis, we can accept or reject our theory and model and know the world a bit better. Thus, our epistemological objective of quantitative research is drawing a simplified image of reality through testing theories or models, confirming them or falsifying them. That was the first part of this crash course, Philosophical and Theoretical Foundations of Empirical Research. As I said in the introduction of this part, next time, the next lecture will be about qualitative research to get an overview of all of the approaches that are out there in empirical research. Until then, I wish you all the best, and it is bye-bye for now.